Welcome to the 6th edition of YouTalk. This month my special guest is Veejay Villafranca, a young, talented, multi-awarded photographer. Welcome Veejay to the Christmas edition of YouTalk, which is our way of engaging with young personalities in the Philippines, from the arts, from the academe, from the civil society. I'm very pleased that you agreed to meet with us. I feel very privileged. Actually, this is my first time talking to a photographer in the Philippines.
Wow.
So I'm doubly pleased to do that today. May I start with a simple question? Where did you grow up?
First off, it's my pleasure, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for having me for the 6th edition. Growing up, I grew up basically in Manila. I was born and raised in Metro Manila, the northern part, maybe in around Quezon City. And then later on, I think at the early part of my childhood, I was brought to Baguio, up north.
And you studied fine art at the University of
Santo Tomas.
Santo Tomas.
Yeah.
And may I ask you what inspired you to become a photographer? And we will discuss the different terms around photography. But first, you studied with fine arts and you decided to become a photographer.
Studying fine arts maybe came a little bit later. The photography aspect or the journalism aspect, I was exposed to it very early on. My late grandfather was a journalist, print journalist for a national news publication. And then my late father was a photographer or a photojournalist for a government agency, the government housing agency. So at a very young age, I was exposed to basically the importance of information, importance of questioning status quo, the importance of looking through images, not only looking at images, but looking through images. So that sort of was a constant as I grew up. But I never decided that I wanted to pursue a career in either journalism, photography, or whatnot. It came much later on. I basically grew up sort of very interested in different things, or maybe nothing at all, like some young people, you know.
So I said you're a photographer. You started as a photojournalist in the news photography business. And later on, you became a documentary photographer. Is that correct? And how was the transition?
So I started to work for a national news magazine, the Philippines Graphic, which was formed the foundation of my journalism practice. After a few years and after a few interests that came along the way, I decided to choose specific topics to follow, and that made me pursue documentary photography.
Was it more driven by assignments you were given, opportunities in a sense, or was it more in the pursuit of personal projects? What do you think was the driving force?
I think it was more of the pursuit of personal projects. Back then, the idea of documentary photography, I think, was very much romanticized, at least by myself. I thought that you could do long-term projects and get institutional funding or grants, and people will support it. But I think I was sort of wrong. But I still pursued because at least at that time, I believed in one project and in one story that I was working on. And I keep pushing on. I just did find ways on how to make it work.
What was this particular project?
Back then, it was the lives of former gang members in marginalized in the slum, in one of Manila's biggest and most condensed slum. It was in Baseco, in Tondo. I found the group maybe 2 or 3 years into the photojournalism staffer's position or job.
My question, I guess, is you don't arrive there with a camera and start shooting, right? You have to
feel your way in, of sorts.
Exactly.
Yeah. For me, it was a trial and error, trial sort of process. I don't want to say it's an error. Back then, one of my interests outside of journalism or photography was hip hop culture, African American music, those kind of things. I'm very Western, very American, if I may say. And of course, a huge part of Filipino society was influenced by African American culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw them. They were dancing on the streets, doing hip hop. They were rapping, but in Filipino. So I was like, wow, very interesting. I think, is this original? You know, I kept asking questions and probing. And then later on, they just mentioned that they were a gang. So that sort of started my deeper interest. So the process for me was, apart from talking to them, doing research about the area. I know the area was not easy to navigate, especially even for journalists. Basically outsiders.
Okay. And what was the final result? What was the result of that? Was it an exhibition? Was it a book? Was it both?
So in 2008, I was fortunate to be given the Ian Parry Scholarship Award. The Ian Parry grant is based in the UK. It's named after the late Ian Parry, photojournalist who died while on assignment for the Sunday Times. I was, I think, the first Asian to be given that opportunity. So I used that to pursue another project. So when it was published and it was used by the Ian Parry organization or scholarship grant, it was exhibited at the UK in London, and I was fortunate as well to be invited at Visa pour l'Image in the south of France in the photojournalism festival. I felt that I think the work has been given enough attention.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not the issues that sort of cover it, but I felt that I had to do something else.
And I think you use an analogy which I find extremely telling, which is the analogy of light, which is of course the essence of photography.
Yeah.
Because without light there is no photography.
Yeah.
And at the same time there is a figurative sense to light that you also conceptualize.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Could you tell us more?
I just read it somewhere. It's carpe lucem, or seize the light. It's a Latin phrase which means seize the light. I think for me, generally in every situation or in every frame, I try to look for an alternative to a bright space. I almost always gravitate towards a shadowy area. This is just technically speaking, but like my eyes always gravitate towards that. As sort of cliche as it may seem, I think we still try to find a bit of light in different situations. May it be climate change, may it be gangs, women's rights, and so on.
There is this sentence in a poem by Leonard Cohen, which goes like this, I think, there is a crack in everything,
Yeah.
and this is where the light comes through.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
We live in a world where there are lots of pictures. Mm-hmm. We are almost overwhelmed by pictures. And people are taking selfies all the time. What is the photographer perspective on this social issue?
Wow.
Does it bother you? Does it? Are you indifferent?
I don't know about the other photographers, but as I mentioned, I was part of that transition, the generation.
Yeah.
So our generation was sort of in that quote unquote problematic stage of, no, we're, film photography and analog is still the best way to do it. The quality is superb, but then the technology was there and it evolved really fast. And we had to adapt to both. I'm a cross. I practice both digital and analog photography. But then I think the idea of having too much pictures in the world is a problem generally. But if you are a photographer working with projects or stories that you find interesting, like I always say, or like what other people had said, if you are able to make one person read or look at your image and have a conversation with them, I think the work is done. Our claim is always to show our work in a vast audience, as far and wide as we can. But I think for me, it's sometimes just to simplify it. As long as a younger person reads through my images, not only sees my image and sees, wow, beautiful image, or wow, I don't like this image, it sucks. But engage in that conversation, I think okay. I'm okay with that.
Do you always carry a camera with you?
Not anymore because we have camera phones now. I used to carry it a lot back then on dates, on whatever.
It's a bit images, I suppose, are a bit like words. There are also too many words in the world, and people are texting all the time, and some of that is just chatter, right?
Correct.
And but there are still writers that will choose the right words and tell the stories that will connect with people. So I suppose this is the same in your trade.
Very much so. I think, for example, there's this French artist JR who took. I mean, he's not only a photographer, but he's an artist. He took images and splashes them all over different places. He did the Eiffel Tower. I think he did the slums of Africa. I forgot which country. But that's his way of reaching far and wide. And then he uses those images to post on social media. So it's kind of a meta thing, you know, an image of an image in a community and then posted on social media. He's efficient in that. He did portraits along the Mexico border. There are some photographers who works quietly, I guess. They would rather print small zines or books and then starts distributing them, going from one area to the other. So yeah, I think it really depends how you find your path, where your voice can be heard, or at least given the chance to be heard.
Thank you very much, Veejay.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much.